Hi, I'm Martha, and I'm the Heritage Collection Manager for the Evelyn M. McCulp Heritage Collection at the Nappanee Center. I'm so excited to share 100 years of NPL with you. I'm only skimming the surface, and I hope that you rejoin me throughout the year as we learn more about the library and its history. Tonight, we're going to talk about the beginnings of the library and through all three building projects and a few extra little things along the way. So let's get started. All right, first we have a little bit of a library swindle. So in 1885, a young man came to Nappanee with hopes of establishing a circulating library. It was found that his collection wasn't very good. The books were all fiction of the cheapest style and worth anywhere from 3 cents to 10 cents a copy. And he was charging up to 50 cents to sign up, and he nearly got 50 visitors to sign up for this endeavor. He left town in a hurry, and if he would have been successful, he would have collected $35. So next in 1895, started the Ladies Library Association, and they formed a small collection of books, about 178 of those books. Membership was $1, and single books could be borrowed for 2 weeks, and it was 50 cents to renew per year after the initial $1 membership fee. Non-members could borrow books at the cost of 10 cents each per week. And Belle Stauffer, who you're going to find out in a little bit more about, was engaged in finding subscribers. When it first opened, it was open on Saturdays only from 2 to 8. And the first librarian was Nora Blessing Rusher, which she is pictured in this slide. On November 1st, 1895, they held a fundraiser at Coppice Hall to raise money for new books. They raised $13.45, and the talent was local, so it was a Mr. Will Rosberg, who was the entertainment along with the junior orchestra. So the Ladies Library Association had a couple different locations. First, it started in the Carriage Works. So this is a picture of the Carriage Works factory. Then it moved to the Hartman building in the upstairs. It was in a dressmaking parlor for a while in 1897, and in 1899, it was located in the Women's Relief Corps room. And this was all in the upstairs of the Hartman building. So they were just kind of moving from room to room. But by 1900, they were located at Mrs. C.M. Flickinger's millinery shop on West Market Street. When the library was at the millinery shop, we know that it was open on Saturdays from 3 to 5 and from 7 to 8 p.m. So the Ladies Library Association survived for many years, despite moving around, being in women's shops over men's shops, and with also their hours being only open on Saturdays for a limited amount of time. So on March 1st, 1912, the Nappanee newspaper published an article about why Nappanee needed a public library. And they gave a whole bunch of reasons. So they said that the reasons were that it would be an influence for good every day in the week. It would make the town attractive to the class of people that they wanted as neighbors. It would mold the characters of children. A good library would get gifts from wealthy citizens. It would be the center of intellectual life, and it would stimulate growth and all kinds of clubs for study and debating. A great part of the education is to know how to find facts, and the library could provide that. The need for a library would carry forward in a better manner with the education of children who have to leave school. It gave a need to thoughts and inspirations to teachers, and it would help our mechanics in our employments and to give the best thoughts of the workers in their line. So that's when Thursday Club really got involved, and they led the charge for Nappanee to get a library. So in 1916, they got behind the idea of a public library. They, in June of that year, they organized an art sale and exhibit, and they were able to collect 700 curio cabinets for the exhibit, and they were able to use the Whistler building, which we just figured out that the Whistler building would be on the west side of Route 152 today. It was open for 1 week in June in the afternoon and evening, and the Thursday Club was able to donate $31.50 to start the library fund. In 1917, there was a musical held called Fifi of the Toy Shop, and it was a fantasy, and it was held at the auditorium on March 2nd. The hope of the ladies was that enough funds would be obtained through local entertainments to make a start, and that matter could be taken up later by businessmen. And they were able to raise $60 from the Fifi performance. In December of 1917, a Civil War play called A Virginia Heroine, put on by the Nappanee Musical Club, was intended to have the funds go to the library, but instead they were given to the Red Cross since the war work became more urgent. And you're gonna, in a little bit, we're gonna talk about more about war work and how the library was delayed. Okay, so next we have Belle Stauffer, and we're going to talk about Belle Stauffer. And Belle Stauffer was this major library advocate. I mentioned her earlier with the Ladies Library Association, and she really took charge in encouraging people to become subscribers, going out into the country and saying, hey, this is more than just a library for the people in the town, it's for you also. And so her and her husband Horace moved to Indianapolis from Nappanee in 1898, so that he could serve as a state representative. But they returned in 1919, and she hit the ground running to get Nappanee a public library. I read somewhere that living in Indianapolis, she got to have that public library experience and wanted that for Nappanee also. So she carried a petition, and with that petition, she needed a certain amount of signatures to be able for Nappanee to get a public library. And so Nappanee was able, once she obtained all of those signatures, Nappanee was able to qualify under the 1905 library law. So there was many discouragements and letdowns, but Belle was able to secure the necessary numbers of signatures, and the petition was presented to Judge Drake, who was the judge of the circuit court. He was able then to appoint members to the library board along with the town and school board. So these are 6 out of the 7 of the first library board members. The library law mentioned that a judge was to appoint 2 men and 1 woman, and they found that there was an error once, and the judge had appointed 2 women, so 1 resigned when the mistake was discovered, but then the town board appointed her back to the library board. The first library board meeting was held at the schoolhouse on May 6, 1919, and the board was comprised of Charles Miller, Claude Stoops, he's the gentleman with the glasses, and Myrtle Richter, which she's the little girl. We only have a picture of her as a little girl, and they were appointed by the judge. Then Jacob Hartman, who is the gentleman to the right of your screen, and Nora Shively, who is the ladies who, the left of your screen, wearing the big hat, were appointed by the town board, and Noah Lehman and Bessie Brown, the one who has Bessie Brown under her name, were appointed by the school board. One thing about Bessie Brown is she also is to be thought of the inspiration behind why we have all of our cartoonists. So it was pretty interesting to find that she was on the very first library board, in which later in the year, we'll actually learn more about these people. The library board then asked Union Township, Locke Township, and Scott Township to be a part of the library venture, and these townships agreed. The library board was charged with finding a lot to build a library or try to find a building to be the library. It was found that the town board could not purchase a lot for the library building after being asked to by the library board. The site then was selected. The site that was selected was the Kripe property. And the library board had appointed a committee to canvass the town and community for the purchase of securing funds for this site. So the site that they selected was the Kripe property and the Hartman property adjoining to it. And the price of these properties together was $9,500. The location of that property is where the library sits today, on the corner of Main Street and Walnut Street. There were some buildings and a house on the property, and it was decided that the house would be the library until they could secure more funding to build a library. So they raised money by popular subscription to purchase the property. And it's found that they actually, by popular subscription, they only were able to pay the $7,500 from the subscription. There are some people who had promised money and they hadn't given it. So the library board actually paid that last $2,000 for the property. In June of 1920, G.N. Murray presented the library board with the files of the Nappanee News in the bound volumes of 40 years, which those are still in our collection today. And in August of 1920, the library board held a book shower. They said then that they hoped to be open by October 1st, 1920, if they could secure a librarian. They felt that it was a good beginning to a library with their book shower, and that they had a house secured and they were making it a library. But it turns out that the soonest that they could have a librarian for the library was 1921. So Rachel Sear was secured as a librarian and came to Nappanee in January of 1921. She came from Aurora, Indiana. In their January board meeting, Rachel actually posed the question, when would be a good time to open the library? They decided that February 5th, 1921 would be a good time to open the library. So a little fun fact, after reading so many board minutes of the beginnings of the library, the pad of ink and due date stamp was purchased from newcomers for $1.25, and the tables were purchased from Muchler Brothers. The library opened at 10 a.m. on Saturday of the 5th, and there's 200 children who attended and crowded in for story time. As children left, they were given applications to be able to borrow books. In the afternoon, there were 2 presentations, and one was given by Nora Shively, and she traced the history of the public library. 231 children and adults became registered borrowers on that day. An 11-year-old boy was the very first person to borrow a book from the library. The library hours when it first started were mornings from 10 to noon, afternoons 1:30 to 5:30, and evenings, except for on Fridays, from 7 to 9. In May of 1921, Claude Stoops traveled to New York City to see if he would be able to secure funding for the Carnegie Fund to build a library. And it was found that the Carnegie Fund hadn't been funding libraries for years since they were funding the war effort. In 1926, an official library fund was started, and in early 1927, there was a library fund benefit. It was organized by local clubs and organizations, and Belle Stauffer was in charge. It was held at the Methodist Episcopal Church on June 3rd. Maud Willis from North Webster was the main entertainment, and admission was 25 cents and 35 cents. In January of 1928, there was a fire in the library. In the picture that you're seeing, that's the 1921 library. So there was a fire in this library. Excuse me. From an overheated furnace. The rafters in the basement started on fire from it, and the fire was discovered by John Coppice and Raymond Hepler when the flames appeared in the register because they were in the magazine room reading magazines. They extinguished the flames with a bucket full of snow, and little damage was done. For the library's 10th anniversary, they had a birthday cake with 10 candles, and it was placed in front of a window. A basket of cut flowers were placed on the reading table in the children's room. Potted plants decorated the tables and cabinets in the other rooms. And a souvenir booklet was given to those who called at the library. A local photographer took photographs of the interior, and they took books to 4 Acre, and people in 4 Acre were actually able to check those out from the bank. So next we have the 1936 library. So in 1934, 3 buildings were sold from the library site. Lamar Stoops purchased the extra house and moved it to his property on East Marion Street. Harry Nietrauer purchased a smaller building. Doc Frazier moved the other to his service station near Gravelton. And the library board cleaned up the spots where the buildings had been and sowed grass. In 1936, Claude Stoops passed away, and he had worked so hard to secure the funding for the library, even though he was unable to see all his hard work come with this beautiful building. So the library received a $15,728 grant for the library, and they believed that they had enough money to cover this government grant. It came from the WPA or the PWA. In September 1936, arrangements were made to move the library and use the Whistler building on West Market Street. Plans were made to sell the Keller house from the property, which that house is actually still standing today. It's on Walnut Street, right beside the Living Gospel Church. Architectural plans were pursued by the WPA, and the new building depended on the decisions of the WPA board. Every move made had to be approved, and it took a little bit of time. Building bids exceeded original estimates, and additional money was to be provided by the library board. Building started on October of 1936, after the Keller house had been moved off the lot. The cornerstone was laid December 14th at 1:30. It is conducted by Thomas Wilson, who is the state Grand Master of the Masonic Lodge at the time. And there is short talks given by Mayor DeFries and Nora Shively, and music was furnished by the Nappanee High School Band. There was a crowd of 500 for the cornerstone being laid, and a copper coffin was placed inside the cornerstone that contains a history of the building, names of the library board and city officials, communications from F.W. Logan, who was in charge of the PWA, and a copy of the Nappanee Advance News from December 10th, and other papers of interest. Stores throughout the city were closed during the ceremony, and most merchants were on hand during the impressive ceremony. It is known that the Thursday Club furnished the lecture room, And the new building opened on April 26, 1937 at 10 a.m. and they closed at 8 p.m. And they're open on Saturdays until 9 p.m. The main desk, bookshelves, and woodwork were all beautiful oak with special finish. And the library proper had an asphalt tile floor. A lecture room and a historical room were in the basement. Venetian blinds made by Lamb Brothers Factory. Tables and chairs were from Muchler Brothers. The card catalog, magazine rack, and book truck were finished in the Muchler Brothers finishing room. In 1941, the bronze lanterns were placed outside the library entrance in memory of Claude and Nellie Stoops. In that same year, Horace Stauffer presented a desk in memory of his wife, Belle Stauffer, and it had been placed in the historical room. So next we have the 1985 library. So this was the major plan of preserving the old library, the original library, and building around it. So the library board recognized the need for expansion starting in 1973. Dick Pletcher joined the library board in 1980, and they had been talking at the time about the library expanding. He came back to that very next meeting on November 18, 1980, with his front addition plan. The plan was to take the original library and build around it. His design for preserving the original library by wrapping the front and the sides of the building in new construction will always remind us to look toward the future, yet embrace our historical past. The board was pleased with this visual concept that Dick presented and how he had the unique blending of the old and the new. The dramatic use of the light through the new roof to reveal the old library. The architectural design was handled by architectural artistry and interiors led by Robert Holderman. And the library board had first looked at the Time and Leisure building to be an addition to the library. It was reported that there was too much would need to be done to the building to be able to have it as a library. With Dick's idea, he actually also presented a scale model of the library. The library is still in possession of that scale model, and it resides at the Nappanee Center with the Evelyn Lehman Call Heritage Collection. So the plan was to make the present library in the upper level, the children's library, a meeting room for seating of 40 people, an audiovisual department, a listening lounge, and an art print display. And the lower level would be the Heritage Collection, which would be a history library, antique furniture display, artifacts, oral history cassettes, and the historic periodical microfilm. And the new addition would be the adult library. So it'd be an information center, periodical reading lounge, reference desk, study corrals, microfilm reader, printer. The stacks would have nonfiction, biography, adult fiction, teen fiction, paperback fiction. There would be a reading area of 12 lounge chairs, 5 study corrals, 4 group study tables. And additional features would be a curbside book return and a stained glass window. Construction was awarded to Brown & Brown from Wakarusa, and the library board leased the Steve Stuckman store, and the library moved to the building on East Market Street during the week of October 8th. And the renovations started in late 1984. Volunteers helped move the collection, and when it was time to move the books back to the library, they were loaded up on horses and wagons and taken back to the library. The library is one of 3 buildings in the city of Nappanee that is built around a building or a home. One of the prized pieces from the renovation is the library's stained glass window, given by the architect Robert Holderman in honor of Dick Pletcher. So next we have the 2000 library. In 2000, the Nappanee Public Library added on again, this time adding on the back addition. This addition added the children's department, meeting rooms for community use, and a new entrance with a large checkout desk. The building project officially started on April 17th, 2000, and the addition was finished in 2001. The Heritage Collection was moved to off-site storage, and the business carried on as usual in the library. They made sure that customers used the main entrance. The Indiana Construction Corporation of Fort Wayne was in charge of the construction, and the room where the cube resides was also created for use of the Heritage Collection. So the head librarians. There has been many head librarians of the Nappanee Public Library. Rachel Sear, our first librarian, actually left the library in early 1922, and when she married Claude Stoops' son Donald. And Ida Weaver was the acting librarian until Ruth Stevens was available. She had been teaching summer school in Indy, training librarians, and she was hired in August of 1922, and she left in 1924 to take a position at the Indianapolis Library. In March of 1924, Blanche McGee was hired as the librarian, and she came from LaPorte, but she was originally from Duluth, Minnesota. After Blanche left in 1943, Helen Watkins from Warsaw took on the job. But due to a nervous condition, she only held on to the job for 9 days. Florence Thorne was next, and she started in 1943. And in the board minutes, it says that she moved from LA to Middlebury and then came to Nappanee for the job. Julia Milan was next, and she started in 1949. She asked to be released on August 20th, 1951, and Nell Payne acted as the librarian. Or I should say 1951, and Nell Payne acted as the librarian. Julia came back eventually and then resigned in 1957 to apply for a teaching position at the Nappanee schools. Evelyn Culp started in 1957 as the head librarian, and she had worked at the library some in the 1940s, and she came with a mission, and she wanted to wake up the sleepy little library. She restarted the historical room in 1971, and she worked on storytelling and not just historical programs, but also for kids. Evelyn retired in 1977 and became a board member after she left the library. Eva Brubaker was the head librarian from 1977 to 1980. After she left, a librarian could not be found, so Evelyn resigned from the board and came back as the librarian until one was found. Sandra Green was the librarian from 1981 to 1987. Linda Yoder was from 1988 to 2010, and she brought the library into the 21st century and was with the library through its 2 building projects. She was very active in advocacy for libraries at the state and national levels. She even testified on Capitol Hill for the Museum and Library Services Act that included the Library Service and Technology Act in 2003. And she was instrumental in the creation of the Nappanee Center. Then we have Lisa Kroll from 2010 to 2020. And then we have our first male head librarian, Jason Field, from 2020 to present time. So accomplishments and awards. In 1986, because of the outstanding building project, the Indiana awarded the Nappanee Public Library the Outstanding Library of the Year Award. And also, Indiana awarded Dick Pletcher the Outstanding Library Board Member of the Year. In 1991 and 1993, the library was awarded the John Cotton Award, which the John Cotton Dano Award was inaugurated in 1946 by the Library of the American Library Association and the H.W. Wilson Publishing Company. The award is named after the first librarian to make use of public relations to publicize library activities. The award is one of the most coveted and perhaps the most prestigious of awards recognizing marketing and public relations excellence. The award is managed by the Library Leadership and Management Association division of the American Library Association. So hopefully you've learned a little bit more about the library, and I'm so excited to share more with you. We're going to be talking more about the Thursday Club, more about the library board, and more about the Heritage Collection throughout the year. So join me next time. And don't forget to check out all of the Heritage Collection programming. We have library history shorts that's every first Monday of the month that celebrates our library history. And these are little shorts of history. We have Evie's History Bites that covers Nappanee history, genealogy club. We have Nappanee themed escape rooms and the classics books discussion. So thank you so much for joining me.